Hello and welcome to the Beastiary. We are your hosts, Jeremy,
And Julia.
and today we will be exploring one of the most iconic monsters in Dungeons and Dragons, the Mind Flayer. And to help us wrap our minds around this monster, we have a special guest, VJ Harris. Welcome, VJ.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Literally, I've called myself a mind player girly on TikTok before, and I stand by that.
Yes, absolutely. We are excited to have you. Before we dive into the monster, did you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is VJ Harris. My pronouns are they, them, he, him, and something funny. If you have something funny, you can find me and tell me about it everywhere on the internet at VJH Creations, except for Instagram, which is VJH_creations. I'm on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, hopefully going back to that consistently soon. I've got a podcast, VJ Talks, that is starting up its third season next month in September, or it's already September depending on when this comes out, folks, or it's after that, but it's back. And mostly what I do is I run games professionally over on startplaying.games, whether it's D&D 5e or any other system you want to try, and I make TTRPGs full time for a living. And when I'm not doing that, I'm educating people about bigotry in the space, or I'm yelling at bigots in the space.
Fantastic. What an impressive list of accomplishments and tasks within the TTRPG space.
Love it.
I actually am really glad that people are just seeing this. I get even after listing my own stuff, I get all like weird and blushy, and I need to work on it. But nobody being able to see it is better, even better. And
Absolutely.
After I waved, I'm like, why am I waving?
No one can see us.
No one can see. All right, whatever, man.
So, the Mind Flayer. As we all know, the Mind Flayer is a focal point of D&D. It has been for a long time. I feel like, especially because of Baldur's Gate 3, they are right in the public eye right now as well. Everyone wants to know what's the deal with Mind Flayers.
Yeah. What are they wearing? Who are they with?
what are they eating? Truly.
Exactly.
Well, for those of you that don't know what a mind flayer is, they are these like primarily purple-skinned, squid-headed individuals. Squid is like they've got four tentacles kind of coming out of the mouth. My understanding is that underneath that, I always imagine there's like I was about to use the complete wrong word for that, actually. There's tentacles on them. There's tentacles on there with just like a face hole for them to actually get the brain through. Um, but
Right.
yeah, typically purple in like robes that you would associate with the wizard, despite the fact that they hate magic. Literally hate it. But
Yeah.
they do have wizard chic, right? And
Oh,
they typically
absolutely.
have little brains running around with them. They're just little guys. They're the best guys in D&D, personally, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. I mean, we all chose that romance option in Baldur's Gate, so.
I haven't gotten far enough to choose that romance option, but I will. I've already admitted I'm going. I haven't finished a full playthrough yet. And, I'm time.
Baldur's
Where's
Gate
the
curse.
time? Yeah.
It's the Baldur's Gate curse.
I mean, I get it. I've been in Act 3 for months now, and I'm like, I have literally one thing to do, and it's the final thing, and I'm like, no, but then the game's over. I'm not gonna do
I
that.
don't think I'm out of Act 1 yet on any of my playthroughs.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
I know! I know! For those of you that can't see, I just got a look of just incredulousness. Yeah, I know. I'm working on it.
Okay, I thought I was bad, so that's cool.
Well,
Thank you for making me feel better.
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
take the worst.
I feel like an outlier because I just finished like my first playthrough. I just played it all the way through and beat the game. And that seems to be the weird thing to do with this game.
No one does that.
Oh, to be you.
What's it like?
But I do want to hop on one thing you said about mind flayers because you said they hate magic, and they do traditionally when they're connected to the hive mind. I think for me one of my most exciting characters to play with in like the Illithid like mind flayer realm is the Alhoon, which is a mind flayer who's left the hive mind to pursue the arcane arts, a lot of times trying to become something like an Elitha lich, a mind flayer lich. And I think it's really interesting when we watch one of those psionic beings break away from, their hive mind utopia and try to use the magic of mortals.
I also agree with that. But when you say, I guess I'm kind of curious. When you say Magic of Mortals, um, do you see mind flayers as outside of the kind of mortal sphere of things, or is it just like,
I do actually see them outside of it, as long as they're staying in the hive mind, because there's this idea with the mind flayers that even after they die, their consciousness is just absorbed by the elder brain. And so, in a sense, they just become part of the whole that theoretically is never ending, and the elder brain will never die. So they don't maybe have traditional immortality or individuality, but they are something quasi immortal, something outside of a regular mortal race.
Well, that's really interesting because the elder brain was actually first introduced in 1989 in AD&D second edition, whereas the Mind Flayer was introduced 1975, very first edition, in the Strategic Review, which was a periodical magazine published by Gary Gygax and TSR. And it was like this small little paragraph. It was just like quick description. Actually, I have it here. This is a super intelligent man-shaped creature with 4 tentacles by its mouth, which it uses to strike its prey. That's it. That's the only description. The rest of it is about attacks, and it's like, okay, you can be confused, you could be permanently insane, but like the elder brain doesn't come into the picture until way later.
yeah, we have like after the strategic review issue, you'd have like Eldritch Wizardry for a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry. You'd have that for a little bit, and then you'd have the mind flayers pop in, even though they're like not the mind flayers, the elder brain. Even though today in 5e, when you think mind flayers, you think, oh, elder brain. Also
Right.
to a lesser degree, intellect devour, where like they're synonymous, like thinking, oh, they would have all been together at the same point. No, just a little guy. But even speaking of like the little guy who's gotten like additional psionic abilities across various things. Something that they always kept and like hasn't changed from its first iteration till now is the mind blast and the tentacles. Even though like the way the tentacles have shifted a little bit, I think it was in what edition was this? So from the strategic review issue, you still get the mind blast and you still get the
Mm-hmm.
tentacles. And up until I think it was at some point in third edition, it's either the Monster Manual 3.0 or the Monster Manual from 3.5 or Lords of Matt. Like somewhere in that 3 time span, it changes from
Right.
only from you only need one tentacle till it like takes all 4 to try and extract the
Yeah.
brain. But like overall, they've kept the consistent like, hey, he's got tentacles. They're gonna blast your mind with some psionic abilities, even if there's like a bunch of different ones that have come into play between then and now, and like their sociology, their ecology, the whole 9 yards. Like there's been a very consistent, for the main one at least, there's been a very consistent view of how these guys work. And I love that like long straight line of history because I said it already. I love mind flayers. I'm very like in tune with the history of mind flayers and their whole 9 yards within the context of 5e, the Forgotten Realms. Oh, anywhere that they've appeared in a 5e context of like, I know everything about you.
Right.
And then like in like researching like just the publication history and what they look like the whole time, I was kind of expecting a little bit more evolution from them than they
Yeah.
actually got, but they're just like straight solid guys, at least the main ones. Of course, they had like, bigger ones like the Elder Brain got brought in, the Neolithid, vampire Illithids, the Ulathariad, that kind of thing kind of
Right.
started coming into play. But like your base Mind Flayer, even if it didn't have its like kind of iconic appearance properly shown and described until I think it was AD&D 1, was pretty like has stayed consistent this entire time.
Yeah. They were like, all right, nailed it, got it in one, move on to the next.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They stun you, they crack your skull open, and they slurp your brain out. That's what
Exactly.
they do.
I know. And like just one especially as a player now, the idea of just one tentacle being able to do that, I'm like, oh no, fuck that. Absolutely not. Don't touch me.
Honestly, personally, if I was like, upon knowing that previously, I'm sitting over here like, what if I just made a little guy? What if I just made an uber illithid that like could do like longer tentacles, like 10-foot reach, and each
Oh,
tentacle can grab one person, just take their brain out. I know.
EPK.
wow. That would be brutal.
It's fine.
I'm not gonna play in that game.
Hey, what's a little death by? What do you call it if your brain? Is there a scientific term for if your brain gets sucked out of your skull?
I
There
mean,
must be.
lobotomy?
There must be.
No, it would be
No, lobotomy is just making it scrambled eggs.
just soup. What the mummification? What's that? What's that called? I don't know. Insert mummification term here.
Yeah, whatever the term is. What's a little that between friends, huh?
You know,
True
fair,
enough.
I didn't
True
think
enough.
of it that way. Fair enough.
Thank you.
It's actually going to like the inspiration for it a little bit in doing more research about this. You know, we all like make the joke of like the Call of Cthulhu thing. No, that's legit. Gary Gygax is straight like I 100% used that. He actually used it was a book called oh gosh, where is it? Oh, Burrowers from Beneath by Brian Lumley.
Yep.
And it's this cover of tentacles reaching out of the ground to kill earthlings. And actually I read the description of the book is beautiful. It says, the Earth's real landlords are surfacing here, now. From the darkly fantastic worlds of H.P. Lovecraft's world-famous Cthulhu mythos comes a grimly compelling novel of the ultimate war between men and monsters spawned in hell. I'm like, okay, I want to read that.
That
One,
sounds pretty sick.
it does sound really good, and two, it also just like outside of the like kind of aesthetic looks of things, it also is very uh God, what's the Jesus um
Fine, evocative, primitive.
no, it's the aesthetics are there, but also just the core concept of the book and the mind flayer are still there because even like in like the modern text of like 5e, you find them almost exclusively in the Underdark and whatnot. So I didn't find anything that said that like Gygax read it, but like I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere some obscure like yeah, I took inspiration for the images, and also I read the book. So our mind flayer overlords underneath the ground sporadically coming up to like steal creatures away and whatnot.
Yeah, actually, I found an interview he did with N World in like 2001 or something, where he says, as one who enjoys the whole plethora of Lovecraftian yarns, those written by HP and those written by his cadre of followers, I freely admit that the cover of Brian Lumley's paperback novel, The Burrowers Beneath, inspired me to create the D&D Mind Flayer. I hope then that it would have been a monstrous creature that Lovecraft himself would approve of. He's just like, yep, I did that.
Just to touch on Lovecraft real quick, I do think probably Lovecraft would approve of, especially like the whole alien nature of, oh, at least for some mind flayers, because obviously not every mind flayer used to be like a humanoid or whatever,
Yeah.
but the
Right.
transformation from person to monster, very
Mm-hmm.
big motif in a lot of Lovecraft's actual written work. So,
Oh, I like that they've added variants to that too. So like, if you're a gnome now and you get turned into a mind flayer, you turn into this little chibi mind flayer.
exactly. Okay, since we're talking about, I love that when you put like okay, on the one hand, I love that when you put like the tadpoles into different creatures, they turn into like different, funky little things. Right? Love it. Love having a variety of things to throw at my players. One of these days I'm gonna run a mind flayer only camp. One of these days I'm gonna run a mind flayer like mind flayers are the only villains kind of campaign, and there's not gonna be anything but mind flayer tadpole creatures. So my brain's like, let's do it right now.
Love that.
But I'm kind of I'm of two minds here when it comes to like what you get turned into based on like species now in the 2024
Right.
handbook, but
Yeah.
like races. Because on the one hand, I know it's like humans, orcs, and elves, I think are like the kind of three that are used to like be turned into your standard mind flayer, and then everything else you get like a little quirk. And
Hmm.
like I love little quirks, right? I love a little guy with a little quirk, but also I'm kind of like, they're all humanoids, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe just a smaller illithid, like, it doesn't have to be anything.
Right.
I do agree that like maybe you get a little extra something, like you get the base mind flare and then a little extra something if you do it with anybody that's not a human, since humans don't get a lot of like, they don't get stuff like relentless endurance, etc., like those additional things. Or maybe elven mind flayers are more likely to, I don't know, venture off and become like no, not the Ulatharids. The Alhoons, yeah.
The
Because
Alhains,
like
yeah.
they have innate magic in them, say, that kind of thing, or like they get a little bit of extra oomph to it. Um, but just the wide variety of things that they can be changed into, especially when you put it into different monsters, like the eyewitness for the beholder. Love a little guy like that. Love one aberration turning another one into something creepy. I
Yeah.
love it.
Makes sense if it kind of went by like the disguise self spell. So like obviously if you're a gnome and you disguise self into a human, you're just kind of a little bit taller, or like the illusion doesn't quite reach your physical body. It's like that would make sense to me. Because if, you're a centaur. Oh, what would a centaur?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I like the idea of like if different creatures are going through ceramorphosis, like
Hmm.
a minotaur going through ceramorphosis, his horns aren't gonna fall off, right? He's gonna be an illithid with big horns.
That's
Mhm.
terrifying.
And like a
And
dragonborn is gonna be a mind flayer with like scales across his body. Uh,
exactly.
a,
And the
a centaur would be some horrifying amalgamation of squid and horse.
exactly, it would still have the horse part of it. I'm sitting over here like, hey.
Yes, it would still have the horse.
Yes.
Maybe it loses its fur and it gets that weird
Oh, no.
purple
No.
flesh on the
No.
horse part.
Oh, a sphinx horse? No way.
Its tail turns into a tentacle.
Ugh.
Nasty behavior. I support it. Listen, the tail is the fifth tentacle that can slurp out another person's brain. Like it's just,
About another person, something else. I regret my words.
hey, what's the rating for this?
Be mature.
Okay, awesome. I because I know we're gonna talk about it, like the question of why do you like Mind Flayer so much? Since that was a perfect segue. Hi,
Yeah.
my name's VJ, your resident monster fucker, and I just love squid people. I think there's the I gotta tell you, in all of my like settings, whenever I run a game, there's always a book called The Illithid's Grasp, which is about an illithid sex worker who works at like a really extreme brothel where and in the in the setting of the book, elves don't die unless you kill them. They're functionally immortal. And there's like
Okay.
an elf who's like, okay, I've lived so long. I'm so tired of this. How am I going to go out? Right. And it's like, you know what? I know. Because there's the mind flayer who, like, has all these extra, because they're eating people, willing people, has all these extra memories, is a really good lay because of that. And it's like, hey, you do this. Let's have a great time with each other. And then at the end, you get to eat my brain. You get a full rush. I'm done. And, you're better at it. And so
Oh
it's
my
like,
god.
there's this smut book, The Illithid Scraps, is in every single, like, fantasy or it probably even sci-fi like setting that I run. It's always there because I'm just like, I think they're the perfect monsters for that personally, outside of them like trying to eat you, you know.
So when does that book come out?
I was gonna say, when can I read it? Um,
Hey,
just for
unfortunately, I'm not good
percentage.
at writing smut. So, um let me find a ghostwriter for the smut parts. How about that?
Right, there you go. Yeah.
Hey, I'll read any romance novel twice.
Actually, that is not a bad. I feel like I've been only talking to y'all for like what, I don't even, it hasn't even been like 30 minutes. I think it hasn't even been 20 minutes yet. And I'm already sitting over here like, Mind Flayer overworld campaign. Ooh, find somebody else to help me write the smut parts campaign. Like, for the, okay, all right.
Yeah, any of our listeners who are ghostwriters interested in smut, you know where to find VJ. So,
Um, now that I said it, I actually have a person in mind for it now. But hey,
fantastic.
But if you
um,
want to send me writing samples, just like so I can vet it, yeah, just like don't
yeah,
worry.
no, definitely, we'll need beta readers. That's definitely gonna have to. But yeah, I part of it is like the monster fucking, but the other bit though is I do just love a little guy that can like, well, one, I love a little guy that can transform another little guy, right? So like I like
Yeah,
vampires, but it's not as dramatic as a change as mind flayers, which is why mind flayers are my favorite. And like same for werewolves, right? Can the
Yeah.
whole thing. I love a little guy that can turn you. I love a little guy that can make a whole bunch of different things. Like just like I said, just the wide variety of what they could be, which means you could put them in a lot of different settings. Like right now, I'm running like a Curse of Strahd mashup, like Spelljammer thing, and it's all just like an undead world kind of vibes. And you could put a vampiric mind flayer in that, and it would make perfect sense,
oh,
right? Because they've
easily.
got
Yeah.
they've got a wide variety of them. I'm definitely putting one in for like the players are going to like a God, like a masquerade ball that the BBG is hosting that they're invited to. And there's gonna be a mind flayer vampire there. And it's like, hey, I can drop this most places. I was gonna say anywhere, but there are like mind flayers do teeter a little bit more into the sci-fi than the like
Yeah,
high
then like
fantasy.
traditional fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah, which is also kind of true, I think, for all aberrations. But for some reason, mind flayers, I think it's probably their nautiloids that really solidify them in like a hey. If I was going to put them on a scale of, are you closer to like fantasy or sci-fi? They'd be closer to the sci-fi end of things.
Yeah, they have these
So
giant living spaceships.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I love the versatility, and I also just love that like whenever I play them, I can make little slurping noises. It's a
Yes.
fun time for me.
Yeah.
I gotta with talking about creatures that turn other creatures into little guys. I gotta throw an honorable mention for the sloths.
Ooh, it's
Yes.
flawed.
I
Okay.
love sloths.
You know what? I think
The
it'd be Mind Flayer then Slod because you get a variation of Slods, and I'm like, that's a
Yeah,
fun
because
little
you can turn
guy.
them into different slots. Chaos Phage will turn you right into a slot, or
Hmm
you get
hmm
implanted with the egg and you get the chest burster that comes out. There's a whole host of horrifying things that can happen.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I got to give it to you.
Now, what's it
Slots.
look like if a slod gets turned into a mind flake?
Ooh.
Can they use their claws now to inject tadpoles into people?
Oh, stop saying inject.
That's exactly what they. You know what? That is exactly what they do to a lesser degree. The way that the Elder Brain Dragon just has like an Elder Brain spray that I think if it hits
Yes.
you, you just hold on a second. You just
Elder
let's
brain
see,
spray.
Brain
Yeah,
Dragon. I think it.
the red dragon just sprays mucus acid and tadpoles all over you.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not a spray. That's a yarf.
It's a
Let's
horrifying
see.
creature. Truly one of the most horrifying creatures they've created.
Yeah. Also, VJ, when you mentioned the masquerade ball, that is my favorite trope in all of D&D. Make me go to a fancy party.
Exactly. Let's go to a party. I love a fun little party. Honestly, it's supposed to be a reward for the players because I did put them in a very tense situation. There was a player betrayal. So it's like, let's just go to a fun little party.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Little treat.
Yeah.
The
A little
players can
treat.
have a little party as a
A
little
little
treat.
a little treat. Okay, the one extra thing they don't know, a little bit of talk. The one extra thing they don't know is that there's going to be like a fun little horror carnival there as well for them to kind of check out before the like around
Ooh.
excited for them to see that.
Oh,
Um, I love a little guy. But yeah, so like the Elder Brain Dragon. So it has a tadpole brine breath, right? If you fail the Constitution saving throw, you get infected with the tadpoles. And then if you drop to 0 hit points while like infested, you're stable but unconscious for 12 hours, right? And then after that, you turn into a mind flayer. So like it'll save your life if
Yeah,
you're about to die. But
yeah.
then
but at what cost?
Casting a wish spell can get rid of it, but otherwise, like that unconscious creature is going to be turned into a mind flayer. I think, yeah, they'd be able to just kind of sink it into. It'd probably be like a lower DC, like a longer gestation period, since like similar to what the slots have anyway, compared to like what
Yeah.
the Tapple brine breath does, since this the Elder Brain's a challenge rating 22 creature, and I think slots like go up to what, challenge rating 10. So it'd be a longer
Yeah, the
process,
death
and
slot is
yeah, more room and time for like people to fix it, and probably wouldn't take like
right.
a wish for most of the phases. But like, yeah, ooh, a little frog guy with like the purple slime. Honestly, I don't think they'd have like much like their for a slide. My what I imagine for their transformation is the the color changes. Like there's no way to tell what type of slot it is at this point, because it just goes to the purple slimy skin, which they
Right.
already kind of have as a frog creature. um like the claws, or maybe the claws change a little bit, but not by much. They might have like, okay, I know that elder brains don't have this, but I really do imagine it's probably going to be the case for me, just period, when I put this stuff in my games. Anything that gets like turned and has like a good place for you to show their brain, right? Because the beholder doesn't really have that, or the eyewitness. It'll have the
Right.
same thing that like cranium rats do. And like you can see like
Right.
that their like brain kind of out at the top. You
Kind
can
of
see there's something
protective
weird.
shield over their
Exactly.
brain. Yeah.
You can see a little something weird going on
I,
in there.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. There's something so unsettling about being able to see a creature's brain, because that's not a thing. You protect it. You evolve to make sure that your brain doesn't get completely obliterated. So to see a monster where they're not worried about that, that's terrifying. On like
yeah.
a
Exactly.
fundamental, deep primal level. It's like, no, put that thing back where it came from.
You cover that up right now.
Honestly, it's indecent.
I think mind flayers are really interesting in that their drive is often to like turn people and conquer. But we so I help run the Battle Mage D&D campaign, so it's this big social Dungeons and Dragons campaign. We have like a lot of different games. They all take place in the same world, right? So we have a lot of players, a huge player base. And one thing we offered them, since their main antagonists that campaign were Gith that were invading, they were offered a colony of mind flayers that wanted to ally with them to help them stop the Gith. And one of the things that the mind flayers offered, even as these like allies, almost like co-protagonists, because they're fighting, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But they offered players like, hey, if you want more of our power to fight them, we'll just turn you. You could be a mind player. you know
There you go.
see see what happens. And yeah, obviously once the war is over, they're going to take control of you and you just join their colony. Maybe your planet's been weakened and they'll try to destroy you, but for now, like, they can be your friends. They're trying to help
Exactly.
you.
Speaking.
People take them up on it too.
Yeah, several people took them up on being
Oh,
infected.
I would 100%. I love mind flayers. Speaking of like friendly mind flayers, which maybe despite like outside of the concept of what you just said, people might consider an oxymoron, right? Because mind flayers, what they eat are brains. What they eat are
Right.
humanoid brains specifically, right? It's not like
Yes.
they can like subsist off of brains from non-humanoid creatures.
No.
Um, Here's the thing. I've said this like so. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm one of the co-authors of an Elf and Archive Little Baby volumes 1 through 3, which allows players to like kind of pick it does away with race and does parentages and upbringing. So one's your biological stuff, upbringing's your like how you were raised, and it has a point system,
Very cool.
and people can play mind flayers. A part of that is like you have a brain dependency, you have to eat it. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna have this be a thing, how does this function in the world that they exist in? And there are like vegetarian mind flayers, I guess, at this point. And I say it like that because which I think this might have been talked about at some point in AD&D 2. Um as far as like there are in Mind Flayer Society, it's either that or it's either that or third edition. Where they do like intellect devour farms, which are used for food, like it explicitly states, used for food and like to use the creatures, as intelligence gathering, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so while my understanding is you do need to like have the initial like investment of humanoid brains for like intellective hours to be created, I'm not seeing anything that is stating like, hey, you can't just breed you can't breed more once you get your stable bit, you can't just breed more intellective hours from each other.
Yeah. Why
um
not?
yeah, and so like, hey, sure, some people have to die, everybody dies at some point, like
You know,
some people will
fun
have
hat.
to die, but after that, you could have a steady farm of intellect devourers, and then mind flayers could just eat them and be like in general society existing and not being a danger to the public, especially when they get away from the elder brain, as you mentioned. Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
there are like the Alhoon and the the God, the
Ulatharid.
no, I think the Ulatharid is the mind flayer that's is on its way to becoming an elder brain.
You're
I
right. You're
always
right.
say the Illithid Lich wrong, like my tongue trips over the
With alert. It's
yeah.
like weight weapon mastery. I can only say weight weapon mastery.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sure, there's those guys who are like, okay, y'all are evil, right? Because, well, maybe not necessarily the
Yeah.
Alhoon, but like any Alhoon heading towards being a Lich, like, okay, you're
Is
evil.
evil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, hey, hey,
Hey, being a
um,
lich is evil.
hey, except there is that Eldritch Lich from the one thing that they made for Spelljammer, which isn't about taking souls. It's about an eldritch entity inhabiting your body. So it really doesn't require you to
Yeah.
like harm anybody about it. You probably do something evil after being it, but getting there isn't that bad.
Right.
But yeah. But the ways that they're gonna do it, they're going to do something evil. But I kind of like when I think about it, I a lot of the times I think about it akin to like, oh, hey, they'll get away from like they can get away from the hive mind, develop like non like overtly evil personalities, and or even if they are evil, you could be lawful evil and still exist within society. Go
Yep.
about your day, do whatever, just that's not my business, as long as you know what,
Mm-hmm.
fine. If you
Sure.
exist in society and you're not a harm to it, I don't care what your alignment is personally. There are so many lawful evil humanoids on the surface, like that are just walking about cities. That's not my problem. um
Yep. They at least follow some kind of code or set of rules.
Okay, so I have a
exactly.
question then. Does the brain have to have like sentience and thought, or could you do like lab grown?
See, that's the thing. I as okay. Obviously, you can do whatever you want in your homebrew setting, right?
Yeah.
Um, as far as I'm reading, I don't I do think you have to kind of like have the start of a legitimate like. I wonder if you could do a clone. I do think you have to the start of a legitimate like sentient humanoid, and I think in that thought, you could probably do it with clones. Although I don't know if there's like if that's a really ethical practice to just be creating something to then a sentient
No,
person to kill for mind
Yeah.
flayers. Like that's but
a movie that made me think of is The Prestige.
You
So
with the prestige.
it's a good movie, but it's actually relevant here. So spoilers, if you haven't seen The Prestige. Um, the Prestige is a movie about competing magicians, and one of them's trying to find a perfect disappearing act, and he can't figure out how his rival is doing it. So instead, he goes to visit Nikola Tesla, and Nikola Tesla creates a teleportation device for him. Except this isn't a teleportation device, it is a cloning device. And it sends a clone of you to another location. And then he drops the original person, or possibly the clone. We don't know if the clone is the one who stays in the machine, down into a tank, and they drown. So there's still only one of him. And he just kills himself or this clone over and over and over and over every night to do this trick. And he has to reckon with two things. One, am I the real person? And two, is it ethical for me to keep killing clones?
No. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say probably not.
I'm also gonna go on a limb and say probably not, like not ethical. But then but then within the context of the mind phase, you get into the question: okay, is it ethical to ethically cleanse an entire population of people? Then, because your only other option, if you're not gonna feed the mind flayers, right? If you're not gonna feed the mind flayers,
Right.
if you're not gonna give them like non-clone sentient people for them to start doing their thing, the other option is widespread extinction. So, like, I think
It's tricky, you know.
it's a big conundrum where I'm just like, hey, a couple of people died. Let's not talk about where they
Yeah.
came from. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
They were on. Actually, in my canon, the initial people that started this were volunteers. They were dying painfully and slowly. Like, hey, can we actually just go real quick and help the community? Cool. Here we go. Thanks.
Maybe
Appreciate
their
it.
families even get like paid for their
Exactly.
service or whatever.
Exactly. You know, still morbid, still like questionable within the context of
Yeah.
like, hey, there's magic. Why aren't you healing these people? Hey, there's
Right.
people in poverty. Why are they like? I don't think there's an unless in your homebrew you're like, hey, you can home grow these. I think that's the only ethical solution to
Right,
that
really,
if you're going to do
honestly.
that. Um,
I,
or
of
sorry, you can
all
grow
of
them
the
in a lab.
rabbit holes, yeah, of all the rabbit holes I fell down in the researching mind flayers, this was not one of them. So more to look at.
Yeah.
Happy to be here and bring up the ethical conundrums of mind
Love it.
flayers.
Love it.
I mean, that's one of the things that makes them the most interesting is like we want them to be involved in our stories and players are really interested in them, but making them good or making it an option for players, it comes with all this baggage that's intrinsically tied to the mind flayer itself.
Like as a whole, as a people, they're slavers. They enslave sentient human
Yes.
beings. They enslave sentient creatures. Mind flay. Like, listen, I. My brain was immediately like, you ever have that friend that'll like, just, where was I going with this? If it has a brain, they'll put a tadpole in it. They'll put a tadpole in it. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what kind of creature it is. Hell, they probably try and do it with an elemental. It's not gonna work, but they give it a go.
They'll try.
Like,
Yeah.
they
I do have a friend like that. Yeah.
and then I guess there's the question of when they like, they're slavers, they're murderers, they do be eating people. There are no my understanding is, with at least in 5e, there are no canonical vegetarian, whichever, mind flayers, so they're all just murderers.
Mhm.
And then of course there's the question of like, how much of the person after they turn you is left in there? Like, are they doubly murderers for that, or are they just like responsible for, or like, just, is it just like a deep violation of your bodily autonomy? Like, there canonically just a whole, like, they're bad. Like, their whole thing is bad, from what they have to eat, from how they go about it, from how they structure their societies. Like, it's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's. I won't say any direct spoilers because you're still not done with Act One. But I will say Baldur's Gate 3 does kind of address that question of how much of you is left when you turn, and what happens to your personality, to your mind when you turn. It does address that with some characters, and I think it does it in a really interesting way.
I'm gonna have to speed run this. I do love a good. Listen, I love a good mind flayer quandary. I'm every day. I'm like, just this far away from writing a treatise on mind flayers in character as somebody. Like, hey, let's talk about the ethicalness of, like, because you know how you have those, you have the like NPCs. It's like, oh yes, I'm a scholar and I write treatise after treatise on blah blah. And I was like, well, what if we wrote a real one? What if we wrote a real
Yeah,
treatise?
what if we actually made it?
I like to write actual contracts for my player, for like, especially if I'm doing like a warlock. I have a game where I play twins with someone else who is a warlock, but the patron made both of us abide by a lot of the contract. So I have like paragraph 22, subsection B. This is what it says.
Oh, I love
And it
that.
is mostly made up on the fly, but it's a lot of fun.
I love that. In the like Curse of Strahd Spelljammer game, one of the players made a deal and drew up a whole contract that had an oath drake show up. Like, they summoned an oath drake to like bind the contract, which has gotten them in a very hairy spot, all on their own doing. I didn't tell them to do it. And I'm very excited about that.
Is an
excuse
oath
me.
drake a notary public?
I mean, pretty much. I'm pretty sure I'm not misremembering like the title. It's a creature from Kobold Press's like Creature Codex, I think it is, or it's one of their like
Oh, love
Tome of
Kobold Press.
Beasts. Yeah, they put some really good stuff out there. And essentially like, hey, it'll be there like to make sure like the whatever you're agreeing to is like you're bound an oath once you sign it. Because obviously if you sign a contract, that's just a paper thing, right? But if you bring
Yeah.
in an
Right.
oath drake and you get them involved and then you break the
Yeah.
contract,
There's consequences
there's
immediately.
consequences. I was literally, my player was like, what happens if I break this? Like, oh, it could be like, depending on the magnitude of you break it, it could be this, or your soul can be given over to the oath drake for the rest of eternity, and then like, I don't know,
Oh damn. So it's not
damnation.
just like it's not just oh you're dead, bummer. It's like you're eternally damned.
Yeah,
That's
essentially.
fun.
Or in
But
eternal
like not
servitude, I
like
guess.
going to hell, because the Oath Drake, like, he's not gonna send your soul to the nine hells. The Oath Drake can do virtually whatever they want with your soul.
So it's like Beetlejuice where you become like a civil servant.
Yeah,
You file
pretty
their
much.
paperwork.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if oath drakes aren't born out of like two ways that I should really go read the stat block, but in my brain, oath drakes are born in two
Right.
ways. The normal way that's in the like entry, and then like, oh hey, we have these lesser oath drakes, which get made from people that break their oaths, and then they have to do this for the rest of eternity with no like.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's fun.
Just a quick little transformation, knowing that now, well, you broke your oath, so now you gotta enforce others for the rest of forever, I guess. Um, but yeah,
Blech.
yeah, mind flayer and ethics.
It's a difficult one.
And
They're-
a tangled web.
There's slavers who have to murder people to live. Like, there's no way to make them wholly ethical.
Even like just
Lovely.
even like just once, or I guess okay. Obviously there's no like hard and fast rules for how many intellect hour brains you need to set up a farm. Me personally,
Right.
when I think about like how that functions, I would be like, okay, I think they'd need like 10 people for a solid like we're gonna breed these intellective hour stock, right? Because that gives you 5 pairings. Who know like
Yeah.
just to like kind of keep it and start going, obviously, and then but of course. Then there's also the fact that they probably still have to be eating people while the breeding process is happening. So like there's
Right.
more than 10 people that are dying in this case. If we're saying,
While
hey,
it sets up. Yeah.
exactly. If
Yeah.
we're saying, hey, you can't do this. You can't just home grow them, right?
Well, and then you have to worry about biodiversity, and it gets a whole quagmire. Ugh.
I don't know how much biodiversity there needs to be with intellect devourers. They're just a brain, but
You don't know.
true.
What if they pass on undesired? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. What if one of them's diseased?
Yeah, that's true.
I'm
On
not
the
a DM,
upside.
all right?
Yeah. On the upside though, if you could get the like production done quickly, you could technically keep a mind flayer alive on 1 brain per month. It's not like it'll survive. It's not going to be happy, but it'll survive.
Right.
However,
It's like a tortoise.
yeah, like
Don't
every
make
2
fun of
weeks,
it.
if we're going with like, hey, I want to be fully fulfilled. I don't want to just be surviving. So 2 brains a month, and then of course. I kind of like whenever I think about mind flayers, I like this is true for vampires too. I like the idea of like, okay, you have the specific thing that you have to eat, but what if we just garnish it up a bit? Like, have either of you seen iZombie?
Yes.
You know how okay, so for anybody who doesn't know,
Great
iZombie
show.
is essentially a cop show about a coroner who gets turned into a zombie who can eat the brains, who has to eat brains of the victims and then gets visions from it and helps the cops, etc., etc. Like, and it gets more into that, right? However, because she can only eat brains, she cooks them in a variety of ways where the core ingredient is the brain. And I'm sitting over here like, I love a little guy where it's like, oh yes, I'd like a brain frittata, please. Like I am
Right.
I
The brain
imagine
fried rice.
exactly. And then like the same thing with vampires. Like, okay, I'm like, okay, vampires can digest anything if it has enough blood in it. If it has like, you're fine. Like, here, go have your, I don't know, blood chocolate cake or what the fuck ever, like whatever you want to call it, it's fine.
You
And,
can
like-
use blood as an egg substitute in baking.
Ooh, really?
Can you?
Yeah. You can.
Cool.
Huh.
Also, Brain Wellington. All right.
Exactly. So you're also sitting here like, even if you get the the farm brains, right? There's gonna be somebody who's like, oh, I miss it coming out of the skull, or it's not the same. These like bred intellect devourer brains. The first lot, no,
Fake
those were the
humans.
originals. Exactly, like they're snobs
Yeah.
and be like, oh, see, I personally prefer dragonborn brains. I think it's the I think it's the infusion of the dragon magic that gives it that oomph. It's like, oh, actually, I like orc brains. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like a lot of high adrenaline push, like adrenal glands in there, so it's very like
Yeah, I would
even
prefer brains fed with refined sugar, just constantly.
So they're
ex-
sweet.
They're sweet, like dessert brains. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like we've gotten on such a tangent about these guys.
And you start bringing cuisine into it. What's that? Sweetbreads? It's a whole thing. All right.
Exactly.
There's a lot of interesting roads you could go down when trying to humanize mind flayers.
Yeah.
But honestly, one of my favorite things to do is to just bring them in like as they truly are, for lack of a better term. They just show up and they're like, "Hey, it's time for you to get your brain eaten. We're here to conquer you." Like they just
Exactly.
throw out that mind blast, stun people, crack a skull open, and the players are freaking out. That's my favorite.
As they should be, honestly, as they should be. I can't say this enough. I love Little Mind Flayer. I could talk about these guys 24/7. I could give an impromptu, like, hey, give a 15-minute presentation. Okay, Mind Flayers. Hi, welcome to the world of the best monster in D&D. Yes, I admit that.
Yeah.
One thing I do find really interesting too about like the hive mind aspect that they have since the advent of the Elder Brain is like if you're fighting, say your party's fighting one mind flayer at lower level, right? So they're like, I don't know, level 6, they're fighting a mind flayer as a boss, so it's going to be a difficult encounter. They beat that mind flayer, it dies. But everything it experienced while fighting them, seeing their faces, their attacks, their spells, the way they fight, the Elder Brain knows all of that now. Every other mind flayer in that colony will have all of that information now.
Exactly. It's such a
Like if a party's working against the Elder Brain, I feel like they might even send out one mind flayer, knowing that he'll probably lose against this party of adventurers, specifically just to fight as long as he can and gather that information, so that the Elder Brain can work more effectively against the adventurers.
exactly. I think
I like
also
that.
are Mind Flayer thralls. I can't remember. I feel like I'm remembering this correctly. I feel like the Mind Flayer thralls are like kind of still tangentially attached to the Mind Flayer itself, even if their stuff doesn't like, even if it's like Mind Flayer thrall goes into the Mind Flayer and then that means everybody else has it. Hell, they'd probably even send in a Mind Flayer thrall to like embed itself in the party to always have the information they need. Honestly, mine, I feel like, you know how you try and make those villains that it's like you're like they're omnipotent, of course they'll notice your plans. Like a mind flayer colony in Elder Brain is the perfect villain for that. Even if you don't
Yep.
have somebody like in the party, there's just the simple fact that they've got God knows how many like literal intellects inside of their brain that's like, ah, yes, we can run through all of the potential possibilities out after having, seen this, etc.,
Yep.
etc., the whole 9 yards. And not to mention, in their weird little fucked up little things where they like to turn other creatures into mind flayers and stuff, create like they have I said their names earlier, the rats with the heads.
Cranium rats.
Thank you. The cranium rats that just kind of scuttle around and listen in on the players and stuff. Like anything to get
Yes.
recognizance for play. Like you have no idea.
Give
There's
them
just
a cranium rat or an intellect devourer and offer it as like, hey, this creature, the cranium rat's like, hey, I can talk. I'm a cute rat. I want to join you and be your familiar. And actually, it's just a spy the whole time for a mind flayer.
Okay, as like the only player in this conversation, what the fuck, you guys?
you know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I do
Fucked up
know
and
You're getting a glimpse at the dark thoughts of a game master.
exactly.
Two game masters.
look, I've played with this jackass for a very long time, and I know how dark it can get. What the fuck?
I think Like, especially because, like, I know if I put a little rat in front of my players that had, like, hi, I'm Squeakers. It's nice to meet you. Can I stick around? It's kind of
Yeah,
Boom.
scary
I'm
down here.
adopting it.
Exactly,
Hook, line, and
exactly.
sinker.
You're taking this little guy, and it's like, what's up with his brain? I don't know. I was just a little guy, and then all of a sudden, I'm not. But it's kind of scary down here. Can I chill out? Like, like literally, one of the
Wow.
players found a
I'll
rat,
never
named
question.
it Jebediah, and now the rat's just there. Like,
Like a regular rat.
he's a regular rat. Jeb is just there.
Bertrand.
Yep.
I found a regular rat that's nice, and his name's Bertrand, and I love him.
Exactly. This is like this is literally the perfect way just to get in with the players. Like,
Yeah.
and then you have
And mind flayers are smart enough to do that.
No.
exactly. And then you have the players betrayed by their dear, like, rat companion.
My sweet little squeakers.
Oh my god. Oh.
Squeakers is your downfall.
No.
Now the mind flayer's eating your brain because you trusted squeakers.
I will go down with this ship. Anything for Squeakers. Great, now I'm sad.
I'm kind of sorry about that. Not really.
You haven't even played this game yet, and you're already sad about it.
Oh, I would play this game. I would know that Squeakers is coming to betray me, and I would still be like, come, my small son.
I can save him.
I can change him.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yep. We're all the same.
I know, Julia, you said you had some other interesting things about the creation of the Mind Flayer that I don't think we've got a chance to touch on yet. Did you want to share your theories with us?
Yeah, so part of my background is dramaturgy, which for those of you at home who don't know what dramaturgy is, it's basically someone who studies the time period in which a text was created, specifically plays and stuff. So if you have a play that exists that was the setting is in 1945, then you research the world of 1945 and what's going on. But you also research the world in which it was created. So if it was written in 1967, you're going to research that as well to see how the context of the world informed the work. So the Mind Flayer was created in 1975. It was first appeared in the Strategic Review, as we already mentioned. And there's a lot of really interesting things that were happening in 1975, especially in the U.S. And at this time, I believe Gary Gygax was in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and which is not far from where I was born. In 1974, the New York Times released an article called, there's the name. Huge CIA operation reported in U.S. against anti-war forces, other dissidents in Nixon years. So basically, this alleges that the CIA had engaged in massive illegal domestic intelligence operations against the anti-war movement and other groups, including Jane Fonda, which I think is hilarious. I love Jane Fonda. But so that kind of like opened up the public consciousness to illegal CIA experiments that we now know as like MK Ultra, which created the Rockefeller Commission. And the Rockefeller Commission in 1975, which is the same year that these Mind Flayers were born, found the CIA essentially guilty of performing illegal experiments. So I think the exact quote is a little long, but it's the CIA began to experiment with behavior producing drugs like LSD in the late 1940s after coming to believe that the Soviet Union and other Soviet bloc nations might have used drugs to elicit confessions and in brainwashing. So like this is where like the term brainwashing really comes like into the full like cultural zeitgeist. And I think it's really interesting that from that era and from that like milieu, the Mind Flayer is born. It's this creature that takes your brain and destroys it and turns you into something else. And I love that.
Yeah, like it seems like, just when the world was learning about mind control in a way that was real to them, in a way that could scare them, learning about this term of brainwashing and having your thoughts changed and your actions changed by outside forces, then the Mind Flayer comes about.
Yeah.
Super interesting, actually. I can like, sorry, it's this like, I'm thinking about that and the like Lovecraftian roots. Like, yeah, that's like the perfect combination of of like a storm of things, especially like believing like Gary Gygax like read Lovecraft stuff outside of just liking the fucking cover. With the level of paranoia that man just the level of paranoia that man had in general, and then couple it with like our actual like, oh hey, yeah, this is a thing, you know, yeah, we did a thing.
And there are other creators in that time too, like the Stepford Wives, Ira Levin. He full on in the Stepford Wives, which is a feminist horror, he mentions this El Paso, Texas, like they found lithium in the water supply, and that's why there's lower crime rates in El Paso, Texas. And the study is flawed, obviously, for a lot of different reasons. Uh, but even in the Stepford Wives, they're like, oh, mind control. It's brainwashing, it's mind control, it's in the water, they're coming to get you, kind of paranoia. And I mean, it was pervasive. It was everywhere. It wasn't just, like TTRPGs. It was everywhere.
I've got a couple of like friends that are dramaturges, and I should have just asked this sooner, but I've always been like, I don't know what you do, and at this point, I'm too scared to ask exactly what you do because I feel like I should know what you do, but I do not. So here we are, and now I was like, oh wow, like, damn, I want to know what's going on
Learning
with Beholders.
firsthand.
I want to know now. I want to know what the hell was going on with Beholders when they made these little guys. Oh.
Yeah.
You'll have to listen to the Beholder episode when
Yeah,
it comes.
yeah. I'm gonna listen to the Beholder. I'm like sitting here like, that's fucking wild.
Whenever Julia starts on one of these, like to create those connections, it's always like, I don't see the connection immediately, but just let her cook.
Yeah.
And at the end, you're gonna be like, whoa.
It goes all the way to the top. That's the thing. It always goes all the way to the top. I know. I mean, when I was like researching plays, and it was, to help actors better understand their roles and blah, blah, blah. And also just to be able to spend time in the library and make a bibliography. But, and people are like, the amount of times I sat down with people, I'm like, okay, so this is what I found out. And they're like, okay, not really listening to me. And then they're like, wait. I'm like, yeah, man, just like, let me get there. It's fine. Like when I sat down with Jeremy, I was like, so I'm going to talk about the CIA misconduct in the 1940s and 50s. He was like, why?
Listen, I've got my reasons.
Yeah, it turns out that quite possibly the Mind Flayer wouldn't fully exist in its current form without this kind of brainwashing scare happening at the same time.
Widespread governmental misconduct.
It's a confluence of this like you said, brainwashing being introduced in the cultural zeitgeist, and Gary Gygax's love for eldritch horrors that created this mind-controlling eldritch experimenter race.
Listen, I hate to thank the CIA for anything it's ever done because, God, go fuck yourself. But I guess I have to give it to them for doing something that made the creation of the Mind Flayers possible, because like I said, I love these guys. They are my favorite little homies.
They're beautiful creatures, but they come from horror.
No, they're still horror.
Worse, they come from the
I think
CIA.
Beautiful, it's a strong word.
They're still beautiful. Hey, there's beauty in the horrific.
That's true enough.
I also love that the only time Mind Flayers do not appear is in basic D&D.
Oh, really?
Otherwise, they are in every single edition of Dungeons and Dragons.
Just not basic.
Just not basic.
They were too much for basic.
Not basic enough.
Not basic enough.
Jesus, no, you're so right about that. Like,
I
was gonna say, like, I want to know what was going on in basic D&D where they were like, actually, we don't need mind flayers. Like,
right.
All right. Well, now great.
Well,
and then I like to, like, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of 4th edition overall. I played it quite a bit, but it was the most frustrating TTRPG experience I think that I've had. But there are some good things that came out of 4th edition, and one of the things that came out of 4th edition that did not get carried over to 5 that I'm a little remiss about, and I've actually created some stat blocks for 5th edition from them, is the variations of mind flayers where you have your basic mind flayer, but then you also have your like hulking, like they're the muscle mind
Yeah,
flayers.
yeah,
You
yeah.
have these like psionic warriors that are dual wielding swords mind flayers, and we had this whole host like of different classes of mind flayer almost in 4th edition that basically have been erased now, but I thought that was really cool.
Honestly, I'm sitting over here, and every time I think about mind flayers and like the ways they've existed in different editions and things that don't exist here, I'm like, God, I want to make a big book of mind flayers. Like, I want to do it so bad, and I wish there was
Yes.
a way to do it that I could put it on like Drive Through RPG instead of the DM's Guild for more.
Right.
But mind flayers being Gary Gygax's like legitimate creation and whatnot, they never appear in any SRDs. They're
Yep,
just
they're
not there.
not
They're
included in the open gaming license.
I think their names might be in the creative. I think okay. Actually, let me. I'm just gonna double check it.
Yeah,
Creative
why not?
Commons 5e, right?
And actually,
Literally.
while you're looking at that, so the Dungeons and Dragons basic set published in 1977, it seems like it was literally just like character creation, class, couple of GM tips, and like that was it. So that's probably why there's not. There's
Oh,
probably like a dragon and a dungeon.
yeah, that would
So
make
it's almost
sense.
like a starter set kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems like it was more like a starter set and less of an addition.
That makes sense why mind flayers weren't in it,
Yep,
though they could have been.
Could have been. Actually.
exactly.
I mean, your
Um,
starter sets now, you always, I get it because it's Dungeons and Dragons, right? But you always have a dragon, like the
it
the
could have been a mind flayer dragon. I'm just saying they
yeah,
could have
the
done that for
Lost
us.
Mines, the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, like it could be a mind flayer dragon.
Spoilers.
It could be a what spoiler?
I didn't know there was a dragon in Lost Mines.
He's on the cover.
Never judge a book by its cover, Jeremy.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Nuh-uh.
Or so the starter set has a green dragon that you meet,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Oh
leads
wait, no,
into
there is a dragon on the Lost Mind of Phandelver
yeah,
cover. There's a green dragon on this
the
thing.
green dragon.
Well, shit.
You talk to him in the woods. You definitely don't have to fight him. You're not supposed to like fight him when you first meet him because he'll
Okay.
just kill your whole party. But there is a dragon on the cover of Lost Mines of Pendelver.
Fair enough.
I was incorrect. Or the word illithid and the words mind flayer do not appear in the Creative Commons or
Man,
the
Wah,
OGL.
wah.
So not even the names. And mind you, I was sitting over here like, God, I want to make a big book, but I gotta make my own little guy. But I'm like, but the illithid is such a good name. But then I was like, what about illithar? Like they're like it's you can't have anything too close. And I was like, okay, what if it's something else? What if it's an insect little guy? No. Like I was thinking about doing this, like, no, if I'm gonna do
yeah,
this, exactly. If I'm gonna do this, it has to be the actual mind flayer, which means
Yeah. Gotta be sanctioned.
yeah,
Womp
but
womp.
God, it'd be fun. It's in the back of my. You know what? We'll get to
yeah.
it. It'll
We'll get
it'll
to it.
get
We'll
there.
get to it.
Honestly, it, Wizards of the Coast, if you need an all mind flayer all the time book, you got your person.
They are ready to go.
I'm ready to go. Wizards of the Coast. I'll write you an epic mind flayer adventure where they're the overlords of a world.
Hell yeah.
Honestly, okay. I was gonna say I wish I think mind flayers need more love than what they've gotten. I don't think I'm gonna let me double check a cover before I say this. It is not okay. I was double checking. I was like, am I remembering tentacles? There are tentacles on the Ghost of Saltmarsh cover, but it is literally a kraken
So
or a squid or some shit.
I was actually going to say something about that. So the Ghost of Saltmarsh special edition cover was drawn by NC Winters. He's a very talented artist. He's a friend of ours, and he played in our second D&D campaign at Battle Mage. And he played a mind flayer named Void. So if you have the special edition cover of Ghosts of Saltmarsh and you flip it over to the back, right on top of the border on the back, there's a little circle that has a mind flayer's head in it. And that's his character Void that he played in our campaign. He put it
Oh,
on the cover.
I love that. I love that. I love
Yep.
that.
So
I
there
do
is a
think
secret mind flayer.
there's a little guy there. I think mind flayers need more
Yep.
love than they've gotten. I know that they're in the like Fandelver below adventure, which I'm very glad to see that is the
Yes.
case. But I think being an iconic creature, one not to give Gary Gygax any like high praise, God that man. But
Yeah.
I think from like
Yeah.
a historical standpoint, having been in pretty much all of the editions, say for one, having had a kind of consistent view on what they are, they really like. I know mind players are not for me, mind flayers are synonymous with D&D. That's not true for everybody else. But
Right.
from a history standpoint, mind flayers are synonymous with D&D. And I think they should get more love than they've been getting. I want them to get love like comparable to dragons, which I know is unrealistic, but I'll take something less than that. But like not just this. I want more. I need more.
You're gonna love Act 3 of Baldur's Gate.
I know. I'm just thinking like, oh, then keep playing Baldur's Gate. You'll get all the
I
love.
will get there. I'm going. I'm going. I'm making my
There's
way
some
through.
great mind flayer stuff late game in there that is just really fun.
Yes. I did all of the Underdark, and now I'm going. I left the Underdark and I went back up to go through the Mountain Pass bit because I was
Got
like,
it. Yep.
I want to do both. Let me do both.
I went actually through the Underdark, and then I went to the opposite end of the mountain pass and went back through it backwards. So I started at the end of the mountain pass, and then someone popped up, and I was like, wait, they think I came from in front of them, but I didn't, and the scene was all like jacked up. They're just talking to empty space because I walked up behind them.
Well, there we are.
Like, got it. Not supposed to do that.
Nah, I don't think that's how that's supposed to go, friend. God. Ooh, I was like, there was something else I wanted to bring up. Okay, so mind flayers, as we know, pretty much all the only thing they're like really like in like kind of zealot like fervor about is the elder brain, except a small sect of mind flayers that follow Thune, who's like maybe a deity or some type, or it could be a god, some type of entity, but there's like kind of like a small sect of them that do follow them, and that's kind of where you get like fourth edition, where you were talking about like that hulking creature. You get brutes like the Thune
Yes.
Hulk, which is a big guy. Most like it's either here. Okay, I think Thune is a deity because when I was looking it up, because I was like, man, I was like, I remember this. There was an extra little guy, because when you look at the like information on Thune from like the Forgotten Realms wiki and whatever, it's like domains, evil, war, like in from third edition, right?
Right.
Worshippers, mind flayers, worshipper alignments. Like it's like okay, this is how they format it with gods, right? I don't think they
Yep.
format elder evils that way. And so to actually have like a sect that my one thing about this is I wasn't able to figure out if Thune mind flayers still had an elder brain, and the elder brain also was like involved in the worship of Thune. But either way, you have like, so we have your standard mind flayers who are just with the elder brain. You have the mind flayers that broke away from the elder brain to go practice magic, which is completely against like societal norms and expectations and will
Yeah.
get you killed. And then you have mind flayers out here worshiping a literal god, like
That we know very little about.
exactly what do we know about this guy? Here's just a little section from the Forgotten Realms wiki about Thune, right? History. Not long after the last arrival of an avatar of Ilsensign in Orendal, some mind flayers of the Lore Taker Creed went on a pilgrimage to the Cavern of Thought in the Deep Caverns. There was no record if they arrived there or went to some other place, such as the Far Realm. When they came back to Orendal, they proclaimed the belief in Thune, a doctrine for which they were outcast by the clergy of Ilsensign. Hold on a second. Is there another? Wait, actually.
Is there another Illithid god?
Actually, yeah, that's right. There's Ilsenthine, Ilsensign, meaning great brain or powerful brain in Undercommon, was the patron deity and creator of the Illithids, and the Tentacle Lord embodied their ideals of mental prowess, unlimited knowledge, and willful dominion over all other life forms. Although predominantly focused on mind flayers, the god brain was the patron of all beings that enslave the thoughts of others. Okay,
That's right.
that's right. So more worshippers and clerics of. Okay, all
So
right.
it
Well,
seems like the Elder Brains would probably serve Ilsensign
yes, yes.
as the God Brain.
Exactly. So then the ones that follow Thune were like, they have also broken away from an Elder Brain at that point, proselytizing about Thune. Okay. Here's
But does Thune still provide them like a shared consciousness?
We know nothing about this guy. We know
Right.
nothing about this guy. Guy genderless in this context, since we just know nothing about this god. Um like we know that like Thune's original followers created a bunch of different type of mind flayers, shadow flayers, Thune infiltrators, Thune thralls. Other worshippers of Thune were the various oddities created by its original followers, shadow flayers, Thune infiltrators, Thune thralls, mad crafters, all led by by the Thune Elder Brain. So there were some Elder Brains that were
Oh,
just
that
like
worship Thune.
that were following Thune. What a wild time. What a wild time, actually.
Yeah.
And a fun like coincidence I just found out. So I'm thinking Elderbrain, and then whenever I think of Elderbrain, I think of like the Borg. You will assimilate. They appeared in the same year, 1989. The Borg and the Elderbrain are concurrent.
Wow. That
That
makes
sounds
a
about
lot
right.
of sense,
That
actually.
sounds
Goes
about
back to the
right.
monoculture. I'm not gonna talk about monoculture right now.
Damn.
We don't have to get into monoculture right now. But monoculture is a great term for societies who have hive mind in the fantasy sense as well.
Yeah. You will assimilate.
Here's my like with this information. Here's what my brain's like, okay. So the god brain. I'm so in the context of like Forgotten Realms and aboleths who like know everything that an aboleth previously and like etc. Like they the same fucker, but don't know anything about mind flayers appearing. I'm sitting here like, okay. So we've got they also don't know anything about this god brain. Like they have no memory of these guys anywhere. But I'm sitting, but like
Yeah.
where there's two gods. There are two whole gods that are like, yeah, this is a greater deity. Il Sinsign is a greater deity, right? It's got
Oh
portfolios.
shit.
Yeah. Let's see. Mental domination, magic from 2E. It's got conquest, knowledge, magic, mental domination, and mental power. I find it kind of weird that it's also magic, given the fact that, Mind Flayer Society's like, hey, don't do that.
Yeah, and they're like
Um,
supposed to be psionics, not necessarily magic.
exactly. Now, in fifth edition, it's Mastery of the Mind and Psionics, but like the previous
Right.
editions,
It was magic.
Yeah, it was like 3E and 2E were like, hey, there's magic in this. Like, okay, that's weird. Um, but it's a greater deity, and I'm this is why I need them to do more with mind flayers, because I need them to explain why the aboleths don't know anything about mind flayers, and I need them to explain it more now that I'm like, okay, so there's two gods. There were like one's a greater deity. What is Thune considered? I'm gonna assume Thune's a minor deity because they don't even mention Thune's like level.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, one's a greater deity, one's a minor deity. I don't know where they came from. That's the like even in the research.
And Ilsen sign, it says like it created all the creatures that enslave the thoughts of others. Yet we have, like you said, the aboleths. The aboleths do exactly that. They're supposed to be older than everything, and they don't know who Ilsensign is at all. That's
right,
weird.
right, and like, hold on, do that when like
It's conspiracy.
Goes all the way to the top.
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make like do the hold on a second now. Okay, so the aboleths had no gods that they worshipped, but it doesn't say they weren't. Hold on a second.
Right, it's almost contradicting. Like, did Ilsensign create all aberrations that enslave the thoughts of others, or not? Are the aboleths older than Ilsensign?
Okay, Abelis had no gods that they worship. While they acknowledged the presence and power of gods, they had memories of a time long before any modern gods were worshipped and recalled such gods' birth and often demises within their own lifetimes.
Very interesting.
Okay, Abelis did, however, have a certain respect that some. This isn't the Abelis episode. Whoever you get to
Right.
come in with the, I need you to. So like, there's got okay in the context of the mind flayers there's got to be something weird going on, right? Because with the mind flayers and
Yes.
the Atlas don't know anything about the mind flayers were unquestionably created by Ilsen sign creates anything that has to do with mind control, with the Aboleths fall on it. The Aboleths don't worship any gods, and it said they've seen all the modern gods, so that
Yeah.
means then Ilsenstein's probably not a modern god then, if they're like
Mm-hmm.
so
And
they
they might if they were created by Ilsenstein, then they might not. That's why they don't have any memories of Ilsenstein, and Ilsenstein chose to maybe favor the mind flayers, or the aboleths forsook him a long time ago. We don't know.
Could Ilsenstein be an aboleth? Or does it have to
Probably not, because Ilsenstein's talked about. I mean, maybe this is just the mind flayer's image of Ilsenstein, but it's talked about as like the god brain, like the
Yeah.
first
yeah,
kind
like
of
it's just
elder brain.
like the picture. If you look at the Forgotten Realms, looking for the Ilsenstein, it's just a brain with like tentacles coming out of like two tentacles coming out of it. Um,
Hmm.
it's not an aboleth.
See, I could write a whole paper on like the cultural implications of a mind flayer society creating the image of their own god,
Mhm.
creating the god in their image, and that how that might not be accurate.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
that's really
sorry.
interesting.
This is like, what is going on here? I need to know.
Right.
Like,
Feel like we have more
holy,
questions than answers now with the
yeah, yeah.
mind
You know,
player.
I thought I was gonna come on this podcast and just be like, hey, y'all, I'm your resident mind player girly, and I know pretty much everything about them. I have answers to everything except this.
Wow.
Yep. Except we've discovered something about mind players that you do not know.
But I mean, in a mind flayer campaign, you could put a mind flayer scholar that's just you, and just you can do that paper and be
I
like, as a mind flayer scholar, you're grappling with these questions. What does it mean?
so, uh,
Love it.
I know me not knowing the answer to this doesn't take away my mind flayer girly status. However,
No.
Absolutely not. No one knows the answer to this.
I wonder if Wizards of the Coast even knows the answer to this. Honestly, I'm
You
like,
know, at this point, I don't think they do. I
it's
have
like,
no faith that they know the answer to this question.
I'm like, do you know what's going on
Right?
here? Do
Do,
you?
do you even know?
Let's into the vault.
It's also, they create like these kind of loose ends, or almost these like contradicting philosophies a lot, and I think it kind of is this Neil Gaiman esque like writing, where it's like the first draft is messy, and the trick is when you're tying that together, you make it look like you knew what you were doing the whole time. When they answer that question, they're going to pretend that the answer was always that way and make sure it seems like it was obvious that was always that way. But right now, it's probably just a loose end they haven't thought about.
I want them to have the answer. My this is another reason. Getting back to this, like I was already like, I want to know what's going on with mind flayers because of the whole aboleth thing. Now I'm like, how do you not know anything about mind flayers when you were probably created by the god brain? If what the god brain's saying is true, what the text is, so what the fuck is going on here? What do you mean you don't know anything about them? Not even what god they venerate or whatever bullshit. And now, like, I already wanted to know more, and now I'm like, this is another reason why I'm like, I need you to do more with the mind flayers because I need the answers to these questions. I need you to make something that like lets us do X, Y, and Z, and it's perfect. It's perfect if you did a spell if you did more with Spelljammer, because they were off
Yeah.
somewhere, they were elsewhere, right? They had a whole
Yep.
fucking like, for those of you that don't know, Mind Flayers used to have like a very vibrant, like, well, that had a very like expansive society, and it all came crumbling down when the Gith, who you now know as Gith Sarai and Gith Yankee, that they had been enslaving, were like rose up and were led by Gith, which is where you kind of get the Gith in the first place as the people's names, and like they tore down that society, and then they sent the mind flayers fleeing, and then there was a schism between the Gith Yankee and the Gith Sarai, because the Gith Yankee, who were being led by Vlaakith, I think at that were being led by, I think they were being led by Vlaakith at that point.
I think they were
No.
being led by Gith. Well, yeah, when it split, they were being led by Vlaakith, because Vlaakith made a deal with Tiamat to get the dragon rod, and in so doing, tricked Gith into sacrificing herself to Tiamat. Vlaakith basically did a hostile takeover, and the
That's
Gith
right.
Zerai separated because they didn't want to follow Vlaakith.
Yeah, they didn't want to continue. Like, they were like, hey, you're going down a path we don't like. There's like a civil war schism in there, because now you have the Gith Yankee, who are very much like, oh, we're gonna go eradicate the mind flayers, and then we're gonna be conquerors of the
Right.
world, like really literally perpetuating the thing that the mind flayers were doing to them. And then the Gith Rise like, you dishonored Gith's memory, we're not doing this. And so now the Gith, and while the Gith as a whole fight mind flayers, they have their own internal battle where they're always constantly trying to kill each other from the other side of things. And it's probably
Yeah,
one of the reasons why they haven't actually been able to, like, not even probably. It's definitely one of the reasons why they haven't actually been able to get rid of all of the mind flayers, and they've started to get more footholds in various places. Which,
definitely.
ethnic
As
cleansing,
you know, I
ethical
mean,
conundrum.
the order of events might be slightly off, but at the end of the day, like, the Gith were, they were created by the mind flayers in a way. They found this humanoid race, and then they gave them psionic powers. They changed how their bodies and their minds worked to make them more effective as slaves. But that made them powerful enough to fight back against the mind flayers. And it's
Exactly.
only their civil war that I think stopped them from destroying the mind flayers way early on.
Anyway, in conclusion, Wizards of the Coast. I don't know how you do this in a safe way, since I don't really think. I don't know how they handle the slavery, but in a very safe and productive way for an adventure. But hi, I would like you to like do something that tells me exactly what's going on with the mind flayers and why the Aboleth don't know anything about them. Please and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We need the answers to these
I'm
questions.
sure Wizards of the Coast is listening raptly with to this.
Oh
I
yeah.
believe it personally.
Take a note. I'll send them my bibliography,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any
Yeah.
little bit helps.
of course. And if they need playtesters, I
Yeah.
will befriend a little rat with a brain on me.
Who knows, VJ? Maybe you'll be the one to answer these questions.
One can hope. One can dream. Ooh, did we want to talk about mind flayers and other medias?
Oh yeah, I think that would be super interesting. We could definitely touch on that. We have some time.
Excellent. Okay. So, also in my research, there's a bunch of video games that have actually like featured mind flayers: Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Final Fantasy, NetHack, Lost Kingdoms. Like the Bloodborne ones have their like, they're called brain suckers, and they do very much still follow the like very like the tentacles. They have more than four tentacles, and I'm from what I'm seeing, I've never played. I have Bloodborne, haven't played it yet. I think I like started it, and I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna come back to this later. I
Yeah,
definitely didn't get to the point of
fantastic
finding.
game.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get to the point of finding a brain sucker. But from the images, it looks like they don't have eyes. It looks like it's just like a mouth of like tentacle, very like,
Yeah, so they kind of walk around. They almost, like, when you first approach them, look just like hooded kind of humanoid figures. And when they see you, they kind of throw their head back, and no visible eyes, just this huge mouth with tentacles. They try to grab you and eat your brain.
yeah, exactly, to like
But
gain some of
very
your
mind
abilities
player.
and
Yeah.
stuff. Exactly, very mind flayer. Like, I the like the Demon Souls ones kind of are like, they refer to as like octopus men. They like, at least from Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Final Fantasy, I couldn't find a picture of a NetHack mind flayer in the Lost Kingdoms. They all kind of stick with the like tentacled motif of things. Like the Final
Yeah.
Fantasy one has like a bunch of ways that they're referred to: mind flayer, mind mage, sorcerer,
Mhm.
device. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But outside of all of them except for, again, I couldn't find a picture of the NetHat one, very much sticking on theme. Like if I hadn't done any research in here, and then I was playing Bloodborne, because I do want to go back and play it and see if I can't get through it. And I just saw this, would be like, is that what I think it is?
Yeah.
And I remember Lost Kingdoms. It's a fantastic GameCube game where you like capture monsters and cards and use them to fight. In that game, mind flayers are called. It is called a mind flayer, and it has a head with 4 tentacles coming off of it. It is straight up just a mind flayer. And they don't try to call it something else. They don't give it a different design. It's got 4 tentacles. It's got wizard robes, and it walks around and tries to hit you with the tentacles. It's straight up just a basic mind flayer. The only thing it doesn't do is like really a mind blast, I think. Yeah, like as it's weird because as a card in Lost Kingdoms, what the Mind Flayer does for you is actually revive your other cards. So when you're fighting it, like it shoots like psychic blasts at you, it tries to hit you with tentacles. But when you use it as after you capture it, it almost acts like a healer and it like brings your other cards back to life, which is a strange ability I think for the Mind Flayer to have.
Is like the only thing that I can think of how that would work, like just trying to connect the pieces between what we know. Like if a mind flayer eats a creature's brains, it keeps its memories and stuff. So is it like a like, hey, I've got this backup of your homie here, so let's just just
Oh, that's really interesting. Yep. And kind of creates the clone or becomes the creature or something.
That's fucked up.
exactly.
I also love how pervasive that image is. So like obviously D&D is wildly popular and was like from the get-go, but like there's something that sticks in our minds. It's like, okay, it's a sea creature, it takes your mind, it devours your brain, and that just sticks with us throughout the years. I mean, it was first appeared in 1975 and we're still talking about it in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And in all these other iterations, it's I love that. We're all afraid of squids and our brains being eaten.
I'm not afraid of anything. I'm actually very excited for a Mind Flayer Overlords. If you want to come eat my brain right now, homie,
Let's
you
go.
got it. Let's boogie oogie oogie. Um, there aren't a lot of books that have Mind Flayers. All the books that have like the non like supplemental stuff that have Mind Flayers in them. There's a Mind Flayer in one of the Dritz Orden books. Okay, the Spelljammer novels obviously have Mind Flayers in them. But there's
Yes,
not like
definitely.
a let's
Yeah, it's mostly
see.
like the actual D&D kind of official
Yeah.
books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Which I mean makes sense. There's Tangled Webs, which is a fantasy novel by Elaine Cunningham set in the Forgotten Realms world.
Oh,
Let's
cool.
see. Ooh, there's a Mind Flayer in Sharn, the City of Towers, so like Eberron and stuff. But yeah, there's like you see Mind Flayers. You don't see a lot of like novels and stuff outside of like things actually tied to D&D versus you see him like all the games you see in him. There was a Mind Flayer in an Order of the Stick comic at one point, and the Mind Flayer refused to eat the Bard's brain because the Bard was too like there was no substance to the brain. Like I
That is funny.
right? Um I guess I don't know the answer to this. I'm just kind of asking this like I like obviously there had to be some type of like licensing process for the game to use mind flayers, and I'm like, is that how like what's the difference in that process for using them in books, right? Like, what if I wanted to write a
Right.
sci-fi book and I was like, hey, can I get a mind flayer just to drop in there, just like a little tentacled squid guy? Can I like?
Yeah.
And maybe there are like sorry, the dogs are barking. Maybe there definitely are the books out there that like are like hey, this is a mind flayer. You just couldn't call it a mind flayer, you know. But
Right.
like the kind of like
They make their own version.
yeah, the like the kind of explicit stuff you're not really seeing in a lot of novels that aren't tied to like or Dungeons and Dragons, like the actual IP versus video games and comics.
I wonder if it was just too early and they didn't like because I mean, when did Wizards of the Coast acquire TSR?
I think it's also interesting, there's certain games like Lost Kingdoms, for example. It's a cult classic. There's a large following of people now that really like that game, but when it came out, it wasn't super popular. Maybe they just didn't really care.
Maybe 1997 is when Wizards of the Coast acquired TSR.
All right, and then when did Hasbro acquire Wizards?
Is Hasbro the one who locked it down?
Yeah,
or are they just the most like
Uh,
Sue happy?
actually, that would make
allegedly.
sense.
Allegedly.
Um,
99.
okay, wait. Here's the thing, though. Bloodborne was released in 2015, right?
Right.
That's true.
Demon Souls was released in 2009. Final Fantasy. There's so many of them. I don't know which one to look up for that. NetHack release date was
I know
what?
Mind Flayers were in Final Fantasy 9. I don't remember them in any before that necessarily. But Final Fantasy 9 came out in 2000.
Okay. NetHack was released in 1987, so they might have. Then when was? Hold on a second. What years was the strategic review issue again?
Strategic Review was 1975, right?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
1975.
Okay, so then they would have had time to put a mind flayer in the like. Okay.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So some of these were long before Winds of the Coast. Well, one of them so far was before Winds of the Coast ever got it, and then before Winds of the Coast was acquired by Hasbro. But then others like, hey, I'm here, we're out, and I'm sitting here like, what you doing? Oh, that's another reason why the Illithus grabs probably is going to be hard to make. I can't use.
Right, you can't.
I don't have the. Not only do I don't have the license, and the DM's Guild doesn't allow you to put to sell books on the fucking website. I literally just want. If they would just let me. Like it's even explicitly mentioned in there, like, hey, this can't be a story. Like you can write little bits of a story, but there has to be mechanics in it, you know? And I'm sitting here like, is the way that I do this, do I have like I want to write the Illithid's Grass so bad. Like
What if you make it a solo RPG? Like a choose your own adventure?
hold on. You know what? Now that we're here, we might as well see if this is, first things first.
Just a horny choose your own adventure.
Exactly. I can't even. I publish on the DM Guild so much. I should know what the rating is of here. Choose your own adventure. I mean, they don't. Okay, so here's the thing. They do have solo adventures, right? So, the Illithid's Grass coming to a free website near you, I guess, at some point in the future. I don't fucking know. Because I very much doubt that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are going to give me permission to use the Illithid's Grass, to use Illithids in this book just to write nasty monster smut. So
I mean, there's got to be something under like parody law, right?
probably. I don't want to parody it. I want to be able to describe
Serious.
exactly. I want to be able to describe the slick purple skin and just.
Yeah.
I want to be the worst I can possibly be in that context. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to look into like Illithid copyright and Mindflayer copyright, and the name Mindflayer isn't copyrighted, but the image is. And I can't see when the image copyright was copyrighted.
Ah.
Wait, the name's not copyrighted?
Mindflayer is too vague to be copyrighted. I think Illithid is copyrighted.
Oh.
I think a Chinese company might own the Mindflayer trademark. Once we get into copyright law, it gets real wonky.
Right.
Maybe I just need to change it to the Mind Flayer's Graphs then, since it's too.
Right?
Yeah.
Just don't say Illithid at all, and you're good. Theoretically.
Allegedly.
Damn, how did we get back here to monster fucking? I did that. That's how we got back here. I did that sentence, actually.
Full circle.
Full circle here.
Love it.
Do you have any final thoughts on Mind Flayers before we pack up our discussion? Our exploration?
Final thoughts on Mind Flayers. Yes. For any GMs that are listening to this and are going to be using Mind Flayers in your games, you definitely need to have a very serious conversation with your players at some point about them, because as it's been stated here, Mind Flayers do enslave people. They do have the ability to create thralls. That is something that can be used against your players' character, family members, the whole nine yards. And having like obviously we have like enchantment magic, which takes away a player's autonomy for a very limited amount of time, but from the kind of create like the ability they have to enthrall a creature. Actually, they have the dominate monster ability they can do once a day. So that's kind of how that is. You still need to, if you're going to use them, talk to your players about the slavery aspect. One, slavery in games. I'm
Yep.
not a fan of it, which is why when I use mind flayers and stuff, they don't have sentient slaves. Um, it's more like I try to kind of handle it more like, oh hey, yeah, they're constructy kind of thing, just to steer away from it. But also being able to
Yeah, and you
enthrall the
can use
players.
other like monsters as like minions, and they're more focused on the actual consumption of brains rather than enslavement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like yeah, exactly. And but also the like heavy enchantment bits, or if you take it a step further and be like, hey, they can create thralls which they have control over, kind of similar to the way similar in a way that aboleths can create thralls. Not the
Right.
full transformation that the aboleth has, but like make sure you're talking to your players about that, because it can get the player agency bit is a very important topic to like discuss if you're going to take that away from your players, especially if it's for a prolonged period of time, which could happen with the mind flayer. um but other than that,
Definitely.
all I gotta say is use more mind flayers, TPK your players, add them to the hive mind.
Yes. Yes.
Kill them all.
Kill
Well,
them
thank you
all.
so much for thank you so much for being with us, VJ. That
Yeah,
was such a fantastic time, and we went on some really strange tangents with mind flayers, but they're strange creatures.
they are strange little guys. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a blast talking about them.
Us too. I learned so much.
Awesome, and then we'll also throw all the links of where people can find you in the episode description as well.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and all of my sources will be listed either in show notes or a bibliography section or whatever I can
She
get up
loves
there.
a
I
bibliography.
really do.
Hell yeah. I love that. I can't wait to take a look at all of them, honestly. This was also a very informative conversation for me as well. I learned a lot.
Yay!
Awesome, yeah. I learned a whole lot as well. I think a lot of new ideas for my players too.
Jesus. Oh no. Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.